1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2.
1, 2, 3. Okay, so welcome to CIB W078 Information Technology for Construction. I understand this is the 39th conference, so it's been going on for a little while, which is very exciting to be back together as well, not just online, but welcome also for those who are joining us online. My name is Guillermo Aranda-Mena. I'm associate professor at RMIT, the School of Property Construction and Project Management, and it's been a journey, but I would say a very enjoyable journey. And I'm not making this up. Preparing the conference. The last couple of years, as we all know, have been challenging, but events like this really get us to have the foresight and see what we're really about and really doing in academia, but also in relation to society. So I'm incredibly also fortunate and thankful for being appointed a chair for this session, or not session, the conference. Robert gave me a call last year, and we had to play a very, I would say, catch-up game with the rest of the Congress, because we joined the Congress a little later, and that was a very quick response from you guys who submitted your papers. A very, very surprising and unfortunate response from peer reviewers as well. There was a very fast and very, very small declining of paper reviews. Everyone I contact, they actually say yes, so I've just been very surprised. So a lot of people probably getting too bored with the lockdown or something, but that was very fortunate for us. And also the quality of the papers, very good papers, not as many as we were hoping to, but at least 45 or so papers for this event. It really is significant for having a stand within the Congress. More importantly, we try our best to get feedback that was constructive to your papers, right? So the peer review is not always as expected in terms of detail, but that's why we are here, and that's my hope for the whole event, that PhD students, researchers, and experienced academics discuss enough the research and the work, how you can move forward and improve and bring fresh thinking and fresh ideas. We are also incredibly fortunate to have our keynote speakers, and I'll stand to that. To reduce confusion across the Congress, keynote Congress speakers and then keynote conference speakers, and then I was told, oh no, those are future speakers. I said, this has been running for 39 years. We're not going to change that term of keynote speakers for our CIB 78. In kind. So in kind means they traveled to Melbourne. They found the means to be here, and I personally feel incredibly fortunate to have the caliber of our keynote speakers coming all the way to Melbourne from very far distant locations. So for this morning we have Dr. Alain Zarli, and he is very famous in Europe and around the world, but I'll still going to introduce him for our colleagues in Australia and elsewhere, right? So Alain is managing partner of R2M Solutions and Secretary General of the ECTP, which is the European Construction Technology Platform. He has formerly been head of the Innovation Numérique per la Construction division at the Centre Scientifique et Technique du Bâtiment. Technologies de Information and Diffusion Department, that's a European Affairs Manager, CSTB. His main fields of interest are IT for construction, including programming languages and compilation, semantic modeling, rule-based language, and knowledge-based systems, distributed architectures, software, components, and technologies for smart constructions, and their broad application to the built environment and the construction industry, in particular BIM, digital twins, He has been project coordinator of various European collaboration projects, the FP projects and the Horizon 2020. He has been long-time supporter of ECTP initiatives, energy and efficient buildings, active agent and design, infrastructure and mobility, and digital built environment committees in road mapping and impact assessment, and is now responsible for the development of the Build for People partnership under the Horizon Europe Framework Program. He is the acting expert for the review of European research and development projects on behalf of the European Commission, and has been participating in the European Commission Advisory Group for ICT infrastructure for energy efficient buildings and neighborhoods for carbon neutral cities. He has been acting as leader of the Open Data Action Group in the European Innovation Partnership, Smart Cities and Communities, and he has contributed as expert to the EIP, Operational Implementation Plan, in particular in the Sustainable District and Built Environment Action Cluster. He is an organizing of various conferences in the past and present, including ICE, CIB W078, ECPPM, as well as a series of ECTP conferences. Alain, very impressive, and we welcome you and thank you once again. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Guillermo. Yes. So very warm welcome from me as well. Very, very happy to, of course, meet you again. Sorry. So very, very happy to see you there today in Melbourne, and especially, of course, after those 2 last years, which have been very, very difficult, I guess, for all of us. I would like to warmly thank Guillermo and Robert for the invitation indeed. My presentation is not going to be rocket science. It's really more on what we have been achieving over many years in Europe in order to develop some collaborative approach to road mapping, to foresight and road mapping activities for the construction sector, for research and innovation in the construction sector and the built environment as a whole in Europe. And the way we have, I would say, step by step, tried to structure ourselves in order to enhance, of course, the overall process, of course, of dealing with this road mapping of research and innovation activities. So it's really about trying to give you a very quick snapshot of past and ongoing R&I development in construction IT in Europe. The context, well, is the one that you know, at least, that this is something that we are all today facing, of course, in Europe, which is about still keep on making progress on our buildings and on our infrastructures. We have done already quite a lot in the past, but still we want, of course, to make our buildings and infrastructure. Well, probably one of the focus in the last years has been about energy and energy efficiency. But overall, I do believe that the problem is resources efficiency from our buildings, more sustainable and user-centric. And I will not get into the details of the various figures that you can see here on this slide. You probably know all of them, and they are probably very, very similar from one continent to another one. And on the other end, of course, this is, of course, to be done in a context where we want to have our industry being competitive and making, in that case, trying to make the process, the construction process, I would say, more industrialized, more digitalized, and keener, I would say, to integrate many innovative technologies that are currently under development. That's true that one of the focus probably in the past has been related to cost. And that was in particular the argument to develop the BIM technology that it will at the end, of course, allow us, of course, to have cost savings in all the various phases of the construction process. But at the end of the day, it's not only about cost, it's also, of course, about delivering timely and with quality our buildings and infrastructures. In this context, I would just like to get back nearly 20 years before, at a time where the European Commission decided to get back to us and say, you academics, research centers, and you industry players, you should work together and you should try to establish together what are indeed your needs and what are the future research and innovation challenges and topics that should be developed, and that we, as European Commission, we would be ready, of course, to support and fund in order for you, of course, to make tangible progress on those challenges. And this is at that time that indeed the ECTP, the European Construction Technology Platform, were erected. These kind of platforms have been erected for all different types of industry sectors. But the ECTP was the one representing indeed the construction sector. With, at that time in particular, paramount challenges already, such as climate, energy, efficiency, sustainability, and improving overall the built environment. When we say built environment, it's buildings, of course, but it's also infrastructure, it's utility networks, and so on and so forth. So today, it has, of course, ECTP has raised in 2005, and year after years, of course, have been expanding. It gathers today around 150 entities, organization of various nature, should be, once again, academics, research center, could be some specific SMEs, innovative SMEs, association, big players in the industry, or specialized SMEs, from the construction sectors and from the whole supply chain. And the objective was really to develop and to strengthen strategies in terms of research and innovation for the European construction sector to improve competitiveness, meet societal needs, and of course, as well, take up environmental challenges. So it was really about cooperating together, trying to see where we should try to innovate together, then of course, implementing the views on this research and innovation, and hopefully, at the end of the day, of course, achieving the expected impact. The ECTP, indeed, I would say 10 years ago, decided to structure itself a little bit more, in particular through 5 committees, which target, or at least I would say, which cover more or less all the various domains that are of interest, of course, for research and innovation in the built environment and construction sector. It is about, well, one committee is about energy efficient buildings as a whole. Another one is focusing on infrastructure and mobility aspects. The third one is materials and sustainability, including circular economy. A fourth one was about heritage and regeneration, which is really about, in particular, cultural heritage, which is very, very important, as you can imagine, in Europe, but also regeneration in a way of buildings and districts in Europe. And a fifth one, which was previously called active aging and design, and which is now built for life, which is really trying to have a kind of user-centric approach for the construction sector. And at that time, indeed, the reality was that as far as digitalization and IT is concerned, there were no real, there were not a dedicated committee. These aspects of digitalization and IT were indeed managed in those different committees. But at a certain time, and that was in 2018, 2019, we were preparing indeed the next framework program, the next research and innovation framework program to be launched by the European Commission in 2021. And this is at that time that we start to rethink a little bit the values, the whole construction value chain. We were rather used to have this kind of rather linear value chain that you can see on the top of this figure. And that was at that time that we realized that the reality should not be that one anymore. It's really about having more a way of considering the various aspects of the construction sector in a more comprehensive way, and indeed allowing that, for instance, when you are at the end of life of a building, you will probably redesign some part of this building, and you have to have some natural interaction on this. Doing that, we try to identify what are the trends and drivers at construction level, and what would be the supportive, advanced, innovative systems and key enabling technologies that would support indeed this new value chain. And it appears quite obviously that at the real heart of it, you can see, and I've put them in red, you can see that all those aspects, all those elements which are related to digitalization and IT was really at the very heart of it. You can see that those key enabling technologies are about simulation, artificial intelligence, additive manufacturing, and so on and so forth. And that at the very heart, you have to deal with more and more data, with more and more models, and to deal with knowledge management. So that was something which was really which revealed to be very important for us, because that was the reason why we decided to go for a fixed committee in 2019, which was dedicated, the intention being to dedicate this committee to the digitalization of the construction sector. And we started indeed, and I'm going to detail a little bit that we started to develop a real position paper in preparation of the future framework program of the European Commission for what indeed is about the future research and innovation that should be dedicated to digitalization in the construction sector. So such a position paper indeed provide a synthetic overview of the key trends and challenges. We had a study, of course, of those trends and challenges, and not only at European level. From those key trends and challenges, we derived some high-level objectives to really enhance the sustainability of the digitalization of the construction sector. We try then to extrapolate research and innovation needs to meet those objectives, identify the synergies with the other topics in the other committees, and potentially with other external initiatives, and prepare the ground for a further elaboration of the strategic research and innovation agenda. The ECTP, at least now that I'm Secretary General since 2016, we try to have regularly, I would say, we try to renew our strategic research and innovation agenda. And of course, it is the case that all the other committees are developing a position paper as well. And all those position paper, of course, will feed the future strategic research and innovation agenda that will be finalized next year. But of course, the one from the Digital Built Environment Committee is going to play a specific role, and I will try to highlight this later on. So what we have done, and this is the way we have tried to develop it more and more, is that we wanted, of course, to have as many stakeholders and actors in Europe to participate to the elaboration of this position paper. So what we have done is that indeed we had a structure and look and feel which is common to all the ECTP committees, position papers. But then, of course, we have a specific action for the digital built environment with preliminary draft produced by the executive board of ECTP. Then another draft shared for consultation with the whole digital built environment committee, which means all the ECTP members directly interested in digitalization. But we then also, of course, submit this draft position paper to all the other committees for them to react, because digitalization is going, of course, to be of paramount importance for the development of their own research and innovation action. And the final version is to be released in the coming days. That's something which for us is important, and it will be made public. We tried in particular to identify, or at least with respect to the trends and the challenges ahead, the brainstorming that have been put in place in the context of ECTP raised a set of key components, both for industrialization and for digitalization. And for us, when revisiting in particular this value chain, industrialization is to play, of course, an overarching role, I would say, in terms of improving the construction processes. But you can see that even when talking about industrialization and having in mind, of course, the long-term goals, which are sustainability and competitiveness, once again, the digital technologies are to be central. We want, of course, to renew in some way the working processes of the construction stakeholders in Europe. But this is going to, industrialization is going really to leverage on all the work done in material sciences, and in particular, including nanotechnologies and performance materials, robotics and automation as well, and all digital technologies. So this kind of theoretic driving wheel in some way was something which was very, very important in a first stage. The second one, in terms of improvement, I would say, or moving forward in this consideration, was really what we have identified as key components for really the digitalization. And it's really in some way divided in two parts. The first one is really pushing in some way the data modeling concept, or sometimes also called now BEAM, the BEAM, to the extreme. And on the other hand, what are indeed the operations that we're going to do on the data? So we started, of course, on this fundamental aspect of data delivery and sharing, what sometimes we call the 5C, which is create, capture, compute, compare, control. And of course, we have been considering, of course, the idea is to leverage on all the work which has already been done on BEAM technology and GIS, but introducing, of course, more and more all the aspects of dynamic data through, in particular, the IoT, but one can think about also crowd fencing, crowdsourcing, or these kind of things. And of course, with a clear accent on the semantic models. This is something that have been developed already since I would say 15, 20 years, but it's still something which is very, very important in terms of course, ontological models, but also in terms of transactional models for the blockchain, and also in terms of trusted model. This aspect is also something which is very, very important. You can develop quite a lot of model, but the question is, do you trust in this model? Is it useful, and do you trust in this model? That's the first point. And this, as of course, this is, I would say, the grounding principle of what we have called semantic digital twins, but I'll be back to this point a little bit later on. And on the other hand, of course, we want to leverage on all the development around IT, around new technologies, in particular with artificial intelligence and data analytics. I'm not getting into the details because I realize that there will be tomorrow morning a very, probably, I'm expecting a very nice presentation from Dr. Nora El-Gohari about artificial intelligence. But it's really the coupling of these semantic digital twins with cognitive systems that really should allow us to enhance the overall construction process in terms of digitalization. As such, what we have done, and this is a collaborative work, and which has, by the way, in this room, you have some participants to this work, just like, for instance, Loughborough University or BBRI, or Politecnico di Milano, for instance. we have identified those key trends with a focus on smart buildings, and I will elaborate a little bit more what we are also achieving with the European Commission on this, with an enhanced smart readiness for future integration of more intelligent components, a work on digitalizing the transport infrastructure. I'm afraid that probably in Europe, the situation of transport infrastructure are slightly different than the one that has been described this morning by Tim in the Victorian state. So we have quite a lot of work to do with the development of this high-level transport infrastructure. Transformation and digitalization of the construction processes, I already insisted on this one. Facing the increasing complexity of the project, and this was also mentioned this morning with another speaker. Increasing consideration for health, comfort, and well-being. And I will have a very short presentation this afternoon on a paper on that, but this is something which, at least in Europe, we are very, very keen. And also having to deal with regulatory frameworks which are sometimes quite complex, in particular because, well, we are facing, for instance, regulations from each member state in the European Union, but we are also facing regulations from the European Commission. And based on those key trends, we identify those challenges to be addressed, which are, I would say, synthesized in this slide. Integration of active and communicating components with buildings and also with the surroundings of the buildings, and in particular the networks, but also among buildings and in the district. Integration of those digital technologies in infrastructure and the services that they can provide. Data management, and this is something which has also to be considered from issues related to security and privacy, because, well, in Europe, we face a specific regulation, which is the GDPR, the Global Data Protection Regulation, and this is something that we have to take into account and that complexify, I would say, a little bit this aspect of data management. And also, of course, at the end, well, we do those buildings, you know, for people who live in those buildings. So social acceptance and buy-in from both end users and from the value chain. So from those ones, we have identified 6 high-level objectives. You have here an overview of those objectives, and I will go quickly through each of them in the next slides. Twin transition in relationship also with the life cycle approach, and this is something which is very important for us now. Life cycle analysis, of course, life cycle approach with the value chain integration. Digitalized construction, in particular on the construction side. Smart operation and maintenance of buildings and infrastructure. Data governance, access and security. The integration of the built environment in the urban environment and the grid. And supporting, of course, and a 6th objective, which is very, very important, once again, supporting people-centric approaches. If we get a little bit into the details, of course, I've here just summarized what are indeed the main R&I priority areas, but the position papers, of course, the position paper will detail all those aspects and try to identify some keywords. You can see that, well, we have in this first objective a move beyond BIM, of course, toward integrating, of course, toward future methods and tools to integrate the data coming from the BIM with the dynamic data and leading to digital twin for whole life cycle management. And then the integration of artificial intelligence and machine learning, of course, to work out all those data that have been capitalized in the digital twin. For objective 2, we concentrate a little bit more on the digitalization on the construction side, see how we can, how digitalization can, of course, support automation and mass customization of on-site manufacturing processes, for instance, with the use of robotics or with having on-site manufactories, for instance. Towards also customized prefabrication and fully controlled off-site manufacturing. And this relates to 3D printing, for instance, of generative design. and digital collaborative tools for deconstruction. Because, well, in a way that we want, of course, to develop circular economy, we expect to reuse or recycle more and more, of course, potentially let's say components and systems of the buildings. So this is related, of course, to all those aspects of deconstruction. In the third objective, it's about, well, developing all the portfolio of digital technology for smart asset management, having cost-effective solutions to upgrade the smartness of existing buildings and the legacy equipment, which is of a slightly different nature, of course, than when you erect a new building, where you can integrate, let's say, cost-wise, I would say, but when you can integrate all the new technologies. When you deal with renovation, and this is one of the key aspects, key major issues in Europe, with a huge, as you can imagine, a huge buildings park to be renovated. So really having cost-effective solutions to upgrade the smartness of existing buildings and legacy legacy equipment, and all the aspects of predictive and remote maintenance to increase the resilience of infrastructure. We have in Europe quite a lot of infrastructure which are getting quite old. There were a few years ago, of course, a dramatic happening, I would say, in Italy, for instance, with one bridge, but that could happen in probably in every country in Europe, because many of our infrastructure are now quite old. Though this is something which is very, very important. Resilience is one point which is now seriously tackled in Europe, and is included, of course, in our future strategic research agenda. So data governance, data access, and security. Once again, having some models to govern the delivery of the data across the life cycle and supply chain. Still keep on working on interoperable open data standards, and having the opportunity, and this is something the European Commission is very keen to see, is to develop open data spaces. Well, open data models that really sustain open data spaces to enable then the development of data-driven services by third parties. For objective 5, the integration to the urban environment and to the grid, those are first digital solutions to improve the integration of buildings in the smart grid, in the district heating, district cooling network, considering that now the buildings is no more a passive node in those network. Work out, of course, new tools or improved tools, enhanced tools for city planning and real-time monitoring and management tools, and probably developing a new family of digital tools that will allow to involve more citizens in participative and adaptive urban planning. And there are already some quite very interesting tools that are developed. You have, for instance, one example in Luxembourg, which has been developed by LIST, which is a MUST tool, and which really allow which really deliver, I would say, kind of new approach to involve citizens, also based on tangible interfaces, on the concept of tangible interfaces. And last but not least, objective 6, which is support people-centric approaches. So, well, it's of course about, I would say, trying to even more and more in the future validate indeed the end user needs and requirements with respect to what we delivered in terms of building and infrastructures. Improve also the academic curricula and the training for digital skills. And we try, for instance, there are some projects, some European projects trying, for instance, to improve the skills in terms of, I would say, managing energy efficiency in building thanks to BIM technology. And this is something which probably we are still lacking in terms of skilled forces being able to integrate all those innovative technologies. That's something which is very, very important. And also, well, the aspect of smart procurement and bids, probably, yes, once again, digitalizing all the business processes and being able also, of course, to deal with things like micropayments, for instance, or blockchain-based marketplace. So these 6-level objectives have been identified with their research and innovation priorities. What we have done, and this is the current state, don't take it as something which is totally frozen, but we have then worked out with many stakeholders throughout Europe in order to trying to sequencing and identifying priorities. And I'm not getting into the detail of this, but you can see that there are, yes, some differences. There are some priorities with respect to some research and innovation topics against some others. And probably there are some topics which seem really fundamental. Typically, of course, improving the BIM technology and developing the digital technologies portfolio for smart asset management are some of those who have really raised, who have popped up attention from all the stakeholders. But overall, of course, all the research and innovation topics will be considered in this specific context. What we have done as well is trying to identify what are the synergies with the other ECTP committees. It's not about having each committee working, I would say, a little bit in silo, if I may say, but trying to really identify what will be the anchoring, if I may say, from one committee to the other one. And we have started, but it's still ongoing, we have started also to identify what would be the synergies with other initiatives. One of them, for instance, in Europe, which has leverage on a very important project, the SPHERE project, which was funded by the European Commission, is the erection of a dedicated association to deal with building digital twin. So we have now a building digital twin association in Europe, which is really focusing on the development of those building digital twins for buildings and infrastructure, and which of course naturally connect, I would say, with objective 1. There is a high-level construction forum which has been launched by the European Commission and which is a European working group which is working in particular on digital transition pathway for the EU construction industry ecosystem. So it's really a little bit targeting, you know, public building owners and contractors and this kind of stakeholders. But this is something which, of course, relate to digitalized construction and renovation processes and where we try to, of course, where we want to define some synergies. You have the AIoT, the Alliance for Internet of Things Innovation. And if we think about kind of a validation and international deployment, well, I would say that, yes, CIB W078 themes looks for us, of course, a natural, I would say, a natural organization, if I may say, to, of course, work out and validate potentially with validation of what we have already developed. And this is something that we probably will have to discuss in a very near future, how we can, of course, elaborate, maybe in the context of those CIB Vista program, how we can really cross-fertilize, I would say, the foresight and road mapping activities which are done in different parts of the world. One point, definitely, and I will be very quick on this one, but I wanted to raise this point, is really that BIM has been a fundamental step, definitely, in the innovation journey over the last 20 years, or maybe shall I say 30 years, because on my side I started to work on BIM at the beginning of the 90s, so that's quite a long story, I would say. But now there is an overall recognition in Europe, but I'm pretty sure in Australia as well, and in the rest of the world, that we have now to enrich, of course, with different data sets coming from the occupants, coming from sensors, coming from actuators, coming from very different entities, if I may say, that users and objects will be more and more connected in the future. that buildings are also nodes in wider district systems. So we need to extend, of course, the BIM data management. And this is where we see, of course, that, and this is a reality in Europe now that, once again, relating again to this to this European Building Digital Twin Association, there is a focus now which is undertaken by many actors in Europe in the construction sector around the concept of this digital twin, which really integrate both the physical world and the virtual world, considering that this integration, of course, will allow us to really achieve simulation, optimization, and apply artificial intelligence algorithms on those digital twins, and at the end of the day, of course, provide smart services delivered to the building users and owners, and also, of course, to the infrastructure managers and overall the users, of course, of the built environment. That said, just one reference is that at a given point in time, we have found interested to have some kind to try to aggregate a little bit some knowledge around models, semantics, digital twins. And this is one example also of collaborations, which was, I would say, managed by two famous colleagues, two of our famous colleagues, Peter Powells and Chris McLean, and where quite a lot of people from Europe, but not only, have contributed in order to, in some way, have kind of a snapshot of where are we right now at the beginning of this new decade, preparing in some way, of course, the work that we plan to achieve, let's say, by 2030. Just to give you, it would have been too much, of course, on my side to show you all the various projects that I've started to work out, some of the aspects that I've presented, but I wanted just to maybe mention a few of them very quickly. One is called Smart Build for EU, and the idea once again was about collaborating first. So the idea was really that, okay, let's consider that we want to move toward this concept of smart buildings. What does that mean exactly? And shall we try to get kind of a consensus in Europe about what is a smart building and what we want to do with those smart buildings? And so the Smart Build for EU project, which is not a research project per se, it's rather a collaboration support project, was definitely to erect a smart building innovation community in Europe. And this is currently ongoing. The project itself is ongoing, it's supported by the European Commission. And the idea overall was, okay, let's get all together, let's try to share our knowledge. Let's try to know more about what are the activities under development in Europe as far as smart buildings are concerned. Let's try to contribute also to the experimentation and the rollout of what is called the SRI Smart Readiness Indicator. I will get back to this on the next slide, so just a little bit of patience, if you allow me, as a base for the smart building business case, and what would be indeed our recommendation in terms of future research and innovation, but also in terms of policy recommendations. And that are the kind of things which are of fundamental interest to the European Commission, which is expecting quite a lot of this work and coming from this smart building innovation community. One point which is important is indeed this notion of smart readiness indicator. This has been indeed, after some discussion that we have with the European Commission, this has been pushed by the European Commission to try to agree in the future on a framework encompassing the right number and level of indicators that will allow you to tell if this building is ready to become intelligent. It's not about necessarily if this building is intelligent, because the intelligence will come from the algorithms that you are going to integrate in your buildings. But before integrating those algorithms, you need the data, and if you need the data, you have to know to which extent your building is going to provide you with the data. And this is a little bit, I would say, of the philosophy of the idea of the smart readiness indicator. So the idea is to say, let's provide a kind of framework with all the indicators, all the required indicators that will allow us to neutrally assess building intelligence, but I'm maybe a little bit wrong in this. I would say neutrally assess the capacity to become intelligent. And of course, well, this intelligence being enabled by automation and technical system. And let's try to promote their added values to users, to consumers, and to the wider energy grid. We have to convince still probably the energy grid stakeholders about the role the buildings can play in the interconnected energy grids or the district heating systems. We have also, of course, to have users in the building leveraging more and more on those technical systems. And what point that I would like to stress is that the European Commission with us have really put in place a step-by-step approach. There was first an introduction in the revision of a directive, but the SRI is not mandatory per se. Then there was an official adoption through the various mechanisms of the European Commission. And the idea is that, indeed, it's an optional common EU scheme. EU member state may decide to implement the SRI or part of it or not at all. But of course, our role is to convince, of course, the member states to support the implementation of the SRI. And this is already the case for five member states who are really ready to push the implementation of the SRI at the national level. And to do so, the European Commission is indeed providing support and guidance to the EU countries and regions that implement or undertake a test phase. So that's a very interesting model, because at the end of the day, this has indeed implied, I would say, the construction stakeholder on one side, the European Commission on the other side, but also all the member states. So it's really, from my point of view, something which is rather new in Europe. And okay, there will be a set of different outcomes, but here again, we got into the details of what are the smart buildings and what we intend to do with smart buildings, which means that this is kind of a roadmap in the roadmap, if I may say, with identifying 4 task forces where stakeholders, once again, stakeholders from all over Europe participated to identify what are the future research and innovation needs in terms of interaction with the users, efficient building operation, interaction with the external environment, and some cross-cutting issues related to data, security, or business model, for instance. Another very, very interesting and rather impressive project is the big project. This one is really trying, is a very ambitious project trying to deal with big data in the field of buildings and construction. And it's about really data aggregation, harmonization, and analytics platform. I would say that probably, I will not get into the detail of all of these, and probably some aspects will be probably similar to what is done by other projects. But what is very, very impressive, just have a look at the top of the slide. Well, indeed, the project aims at demonstrating the application of big data technologies and data analytic techniques for the complete building life cycle of more than 4,000 buildings. 4,000 buildings, which have been identified in 6 large-scale pilot test beds, 3 in Spain and 3 in Greece. And what is probably a little bit new, at least with respect to all the collaborative projects that I've seen so far, participating myself or not, by the way, is really the ambition with respect to those 4,000 buildings to be tested. And the idea is also to really try to cover the whole building life cycle services from design to construction to operation and potentially to refurbishment. I would like, yes, to finish with two other projects which are also of a slightly different nature. And I'm going to explain why they are, from my point of view, of a slightly different nature. The idea is that we realized through ECTP, and ECTP has been managing over 10 years a public-private partnership with the European Commission on energy-efficient buildings. And believe me or not, this has led to more than 450 innovative systems or products that have been developed. And the reality that I can see, at least on my side, is that very few of those innovations have been put on the market at the end of the day. Some of them have been, some others are still under maturation, if I may say, but many of them have not indeed been put to the market. So the idea was, how can we try to improve a little bit this? And another point is that we talked already about the increasing complexity of project. And this increased complexity of project is probably due to the fact that the buildings are indeed integrating quite a lot of various technologies from other sectors. And there is, in that case, a need probably to have better collaboration with those projects. So overall, this project, which is called Meta Building, the objective, the ambition of it is twofold, if I may say. The first one is really trying to start deepening collaboration between the construction sector and other sectors. Okay, the ICT one is one thing, but you can see that, for instance, we wanted to have more collaborations with key representatives in Europe of the additive manufacturing sectors through the AIM platform, of the recycling sector with the European Recycling Industry Confederation, and through and with the nature-based sector represented by EFB. That's one thing. And the other point is that we wanted to develop a platform that will give access to a powerful innovation ecosystem for any SME, potentially, in Europe. And enabling those stakeholders, for instance, those SME, to find partners for collaborative projects, discover innovative technologies and tools, in particular, all those ones which are developed under a collaborative European project, search available funding for innovation, help SMEs in some way to reach new market, and showcase virtually product and services. We have indeed, in that case, we are currently developing this platform, hoping that it could be, it's a first attempt to be the backbone of the EU scale innovation ecosystem, with different models that will allow an SME to really be more prepared in some way with innovation and how to tackle, for instance, their own ideas. One point which is very, very interesting is, for instance, if I have an idea, how I can test my idea in some way in terms of is it a good idea or not? Is it something that we can be developed? Is it something that is not existing already on the market, and so on and so forth? But you can have, of course, a preliminary product that you would like, of course, to make it evolve. And in particular, if you want to test your innovation, what we have done is that we have coupled indeed Meta Building with another project which is trying to deliver indeed a network of labs that will allow you to assess and test your innovation at any step, I would say, of the evolution of this innovation. So just to make it maybe a little bit clear to understand, this specific project, which focus in that case a little bit on the building technologies and elements relating to the envelopes, to the facades and to the building envelopes. For instance, promote a network throughout Europe, promote a network of different research centers providing very many different test facilities, and will provide access as well to living labs in some way if you have already tested your innovation with respect to all the technical aspects of your innovation, that you would like to test it from the user aspect. Yes. So the idea is really, in that case, to provide kind of a support to develop and test innovative technologies and solutions, having access to the expertise of all those different research centers in sustainable building envelopes, and considering that, of course, you will have access to an innovation ecosystem providing you more than 100 testing facilities in 12 European countries. And the idea is also to provide a way to test your innovation in a comprehensive way. You can not only be interested in testing it in terms, I would say, of physical characteristic, but you can be interested, of course, in testing it in the way it is used, for instance, or in the way it is going, for instance, to interact with other components of a building. So this is the idea, to have, of course, these more than 100 testing facilities, and to have access also to living labs. The idea of those living labs being that you integrate your innovation in a buildings, and then it is tested over 3 or 6 months with real users and with real building owners, for instance. So this is the idea. Those projects are ongoing, and this is a very ambitious initiative, and it will take time, of course, to have it, to see it progress. But that's something which is also very, very new in the way that we have tried to target innovation in the construction sector. So, as I mentioned to you, well, this is really providing a service offer to SMEs to have facilitated access to testing and potentially certification, thanks to a single entry point as well. So you have just one single entry point, and you will be able to test your innovation in different testing facilities. And of course, considering the whole, I would say, the whole TRL scale, technology readiness level scale. So this is something which is that we try to really put in place, and we expect, of course, that many European stakeholders will sign up to this platform. So, last slide. Hopefully, I'm perfectly on time. It's not always very, very easy to draw conclusions or really lessons learned, and I'm a tendency on my side. This is a personal feeling, to be very humble and modest. Research and innovation is something which is very, very complex. Even finding a definition of collaboration, I've tried to really look for the definition of collaboration, and I've found dozens of definitions, different definitions on the web. This one is I've slightly transformed it, but well, it's simple, and that's true that, well, having at least individual people or individual company working together to a common purpose to achieve business or environmental or societal benefit may be a reasonable definition. What is very, very important from my point of view, and this is something that we try to push in ECTP, is really to develop those various initiatives around a common thread and to get the stakeholder engagement. It seems to me that it's no more about just one research center being able to push, for instance, one innovation. We really have to get the stakeholder engagement and also get everyone on the same page, which means that, well, you have to get to the people and explain them in case. Takes the time to listen, encourage openness, moderate, find trade-off. Once again, when I would say when we try to derive a roadmap, I would say that if all the stakeholders are 80% happy with the roadmap, I do believe that this is a good result. It's not about finding a way of satisfying everyone of totally satisfying everyone. You have to deal, of course, with trade-off. And that's true that on the other hand, from my point of view, I was coming really from the ICT side at the very beginning. And that was very interesting. That have been a journey also for me, very, very interesting in terms of facing the diversity of people involved in the construction and built environment research and innovation. ECTP exists now till 2005. So I would say we try to, as I mentioned, to make our community thrive even more. What about CIB? And as you mentioned at the very start, now CIB is 39 years old, so it will be a nice anniversary next year. 40 years, it's really a great time to do consider that, yes, we can do this kind of collaboration, that they can stand for a long term. And this is something that, from my point of view, is very, very encouraging and should allow us really to improve our industry on one side, and even more, of course, the assets that we are producing, which are, by the way, very, very different. We are probably many industries have been doing mass production, and they are now adapting, of course, their products. The construction industry has been doing mass customization from the very, very beginning, and this is really a challenge. I will conclude on this. I would like to thank you for your attention. I don't know if there is yes, there is a last slide. Thank you very much.
First handshake in 3 years, right?
Yeah.
Now, one of the things, and that's a very personal thing that I want for this event, is to have discussions, to have the questions, not rush into 1 or 2 questions, but to have a bit of interaction with the keynote speakers, and also once we get through our papers. As you might be aware, the time was 1 hour, including everything. We might have time for 1 or 2 questions, but what I will ask is, purposely tomorrow with Dr. Nora Gohari, we allowed extra 30 minutes after her keynote. So she's speaking for an hour and 30 minutes. And write down questions as well, because we can follow up from Alan's presentation this morning. You will be here tomorrow with Nora as well. Sure, and that'll be amazing I think for everyone here in the room. No, it's very clear, crystal clear. And but to close the session, it will be really nice to have 1 or 2 questions.
Or any reactions
or reactions, yes.
Agreements, disagreements, your own experience, because this is an area where I do believe we learn every day. Yeah.
So anyone, any comments? Should I ask someone? Yes, okay.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Amazing. So I'm Mara. I'm working in Norway with a lot of European projects and innovations in Norwegian University of Science and Technology. And I'm coming from a bit of a different field and now going to the engineering and construction. So I'm coming from health, ICT, and developing European projects into this area. So you mentioned at one point that you don't want to develop in silos. So you had these 6 committees, and then you make the link, okay, how all these interact. But how do you interact with other research areas and other challenges and with the sustainable development goals?
Well, those goals in general are tackled by 1 or more committees, which means that the 6 committees in ECTP try to be very, very comprehensive in covering all the various goals and challenge that we have to tackle. One of the problems is that we are all, at a given point in time, we are probably all specialists. Okay, we try to be more and more, of course, aware and try to understand, the way the others are also well, I would say the domains coming from well, the domains which are tackled by other colleagues. But sometimes this is not that easy. When we started, for instance, in the 2000 years, trying to elaborate a roadmap for energy, for how ICT is going to support energy efficiency in construction, that was in the middle of the 2000 years, and led up to the energy efficient construction. Energy efficient buildings, PPP with the European Commission. And the European Commission put, for instance, over FP7, 600 million euros of funding to do so. We started to discuss, there were people from the construction sector and people from the energy sector. And those people were talking things totally differently. So in that case, it takes time, that's true. To understand each other, and then first to understand each other, and secondly, then to agree on, I would say, a common terminology, a common approach, and then starting to develop common models. So this is something which is not straightforward, but that can be operational a little bit with time, I would say. I will have very, very quick presentation of what we have done in Smart Build for EU, in particular with health, well-being, health, comfort, and well-being. But I would say that in some way, trying to generalize this approach, we are at the start of it. So, and we already identify that even among those people dealing with health, well-being, and comfort, there are sometimes divergent views on how is perceived comfort, what are the methods to identify if a building is comfortable or not, what are the approaches to develop IT tools for health or for comfort. So that's true, that is something which is not very, very easy. My role, I would say, as the ECDP Secretary General is really to tell people, join together, work with us. Let's try to have communities on the long term, because that will be the way where we will be able really to improve our knowledge, of course, of all the other domains, and to be able to have interaction with all the other domains. And as far as energy efficiency in building has been concerned, that was the case really, as I mentioned to you, in the second part of the 2000 years. And this has been convincing with respect to the European Commission. They have put 400 million euros in FP7 and 600 million euros. So overall, 1 billion euros of funding to develop component systems and tools for energy efficiency in buildings. Over 10 years.
One more question, and we'll have a lunch break. Yes.
Oh, yes.
Sorry, my name is Bart Ingelaar. I'm from Brussels, Belgium. We know each other, of course. Oh. But it's more a comment.
Go ahead.
I'm working as a liaison officer between CENTIC 126, which is about acoustics and vibration, and CENTIC 442, which is BIM. We see that for the moment, building information modeling and all these nice visions are not backed up because we don't get the data in a good way from the supply sector. And I think if we go to circularity, we need those material passports. I think that's the big gap we have for the moment. So if you ask someone to give a speech about holistic designing of a building or about material passports and BIM, it's still stuck. I don't know, what is your opinion about that?
Well, I would say that I can only agree with you, Bart. The fact is that this is something that we have been discussing, well, in another project that I've not mentioned, but which was also called DigiPlace. And at that time, well, we identified some of the key aspects that we have to develop. It's really about building passports, and it's about digital building logbooks. So the way, of course, to define the characteristic of a building, the way it is operating, the way it is maintained, all those information has really to be logged in if we want to be able to have then informed decision making based on some computation and algorithms. So one of the problem is that if you don't agree, I would say at least on a core model of it, then it will be very, very difficult to have interoperable data. So it's, from my point of view, a work that should be done at European level now to work out and to do experimentation on building passports and on digital building logbooks. That's something which is, from my point of view, fundamental. I do believe that, well, it's very, very difficult to do it in one chart from my point of view. So there should be, in a way, this is something, for instance, which is ongoing right now with EPCs, energy performance certificates. And we have quite a portfolio, there is quite a portfolio of collaborative European projects working on energy performance certificate. Some of them, by the way, relying on the SRI, some other not. Some of them trying to extend the SRI. So you can see that, well, there is quite a lot of development around it. That's for EPCs, but probably the same should be applied then for the example that you have taken. But I fully agree with you. Huh? And I've no, I would say, one miraculous solution for that.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you once again. Please write down your questions and we'll follow up tomorrow after the keynote speech. It's really important to have this kind of interaction, and it's probably the most important for both us here and those online joining us as well. So we'll read some of the questions that were posted for you that we don't know yet. So dealing with the unknowns. And we have a lunch break back here. So for all of the CIB 78 conference sessions will be here. So this is our little corner. I lecture in this classroom is one of my favorites, and it was handpicked. So if you got here now, you'll be back for sure. It's always easy to get lost in our MIT, but lunch is back in Story Hall, if I'm correct, at the place where we had the plenary sessions. Thank you once again, and thanks, Alan, once again. Great. Fantastic.